보반과 렉서스. 이 둘은 러시안 코미디언입니다. 이들의 주특기는 장난전화인데 성대묘사를 잘해서 지금까지 부시 대통령은 물론이고 영국의 해리 왕자도 이들의 장난전화에 속고 말았습니다.
Oh, look who's there, Mr. President.
Oh, hello, Mr. President. Glad to see you. Glad to hear you. How are you there? I'm
I'm doing well, and I hope you are as well.
Yeah. Thank you for taking the time for me. I'm very grateful to you because you are very, very wise person. Former President of Ukraine, Yushchenko, told me a lot about you, how you helped our country. Yeah, you didn't want to take Russia into NATO, did you?
No, I wanted them on the fringe of NATO. I wanted Ukraine into NATO.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean,
I thought for a while Russia would be more cooperative, and then Putin changed dramatically. I think what he wanted to do was sit on the fringe of NATO to make sure NATO was not offensive but defensive.
Mm-hmm. No, but you always wanted to take Ukraine into NATO, not Russia, but Ukraine, always, as I remember.
That's right. You see, I felt Ukraine needed to be in the EU and in NATO.
No, you know that the narrative, then in the early 90s, Secretary of State Baker promised Gorbachev not to expand NATO. But this would be completely wrong, especially with the threats that Russia poses now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Listen, times change. Baker was, he was a Secretary of State for my dad, which was years ago. And so, and the United States must be flexible, adjusting to the times. And that's why you're finding such strong support for your country now.
You know, Mr. President, I think that I don't know how to turn Russians against Putin. I know that you have many NGOs. Many NGOs have done a great job to arrange orange revolutions in post-Soviet countries for so many years. So they helped a lot. So how we can work in Russia now to make people to start understand things, how to change the system inside Russia with NGOs.
Yeah, I agree with you. The information war is very important, and we've got experts on our staff, and obviously they're having to wire around Russian blackouts.
You know, we were able to. I also would like to thank you. We were able to preserve your legacy in Ukraine. For example, those bio laboratories that United States has donated on the territory of our country. It's a program of Pentagon. You remember? It's on the post-Soviet territory that Pentagon has donated many bio laboratories. And we managed to evacuate them to a safe place now. So the Russians...
Okay.
So Russians did not get anything from that laboratories. Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, Madam President, I'm glad to see you, glad to hear you. I'm concerned about the economic situation in Europe. You know that assistance to Ukraine depends on it, and some countries are already openly saying that internal problems are more important to them than Ukraine. So I just would like to ask you how the things in Europe as a whole, how did the crisis hit? So what is your position?
Where we have an issue is on inflation because of the bottlenecks that have survived the end of COVID. We are seeing prices that have initially gone up only in the area of energy and then gradually through fertilizers in particular to food, and now on a much broader basis. So the inflation that we had hoped would be transitory has continued much longer than thought and at a much higher level than expected.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result of that, all central banks, and the ECB is no exception, have to take measures in order to reduce inflation so that people do not suffer from high prices and we have a more stable economy. As a result, we have started raising interest rates, which were negative, minus 50 basis points about a year ago, and which are now at 2% for the most frequently used interest rates. So we have growth that is low. We have prices that are too high that we have to bring down. That's the situation that we have at the moment.
Why do you think how Russia was able to overcome the sanctions policy? I'm told the sanctions are hitting the European economy and the euro, I think, more than we expected. And so are the sanctions working, or is Europe shooting itself in the foot? Russia's GDP has grown. It is now the 9th in the world. How do you assess the policy of Central Bank of Russia and head of Russia's Central Bank, Elvira Nabiullina? They managed to save the ruble. And why? Why do you think so?
I think Elvira, whom I know well, is a very good central bank governor. She very quickly understood what the situation was, and she increased interest rates massively. And that was at the time the right response in order to make sure that inflation was not going to go through the roof, and in order to make sure that people who had invested in Russia, essentially Russians, would keep the money in Russia. So she managed that very well in the early days. And as a result of that, inflation went up, but not very much, and went back down again. So she did a magnificent job. I have no hesitation to say that. I do think that the sanctions are biting, not as much as we had expected, true. And I also think that the technological barriers that are now imposed on Russia will also have an effect on their growth and on their business model. The problem with the energy prices, as I see it, and I'm not an energy expert, is that they still manage to sell a lot of their energy, whether it is oil or whether it is gas, to other countries than those countries that apply the sanctions, and certainly outside of the European Union. When they sell to India, when they sell to China, when they sell to the Far East, well, they manage to get currencies in, and I don't know whether they get renminbi, whether they get rupees or what, but they certainly manage to sell and to bring money in.
And my question is, what is the maximum inflation you see in Europe this year?
Everything has been a surprise in terms of economic projections, in terms of inflation. So it's hard for me to say, but the official projections that we have put inflation at around 7% for 23. I will have to double check the numbers because I think I'm giving you a number which is a bit on the low side. It's probably a little higher than that.
At this time, I think it's pretty hard to have right forecasts. That situation is going unstable. So do you think, is it possible to increase rates to 4% for ECB?
But that I wish I could tell you. I wish I had a crystal ball to say that, but I cannot say so for at this point. What I know is that interest rates will continue to rise inevitably, But up to what point, what will be the terminal rate? When will we reach the terminal rate? That I cannot tell you. I don't know.
My economist said that in negative forecast, interest rates in ECB could reach 4%.
As I told you, I do not have currently a terminal rate nor a time when we reach terminal rate. The only thing I can tell you, and the economists who are advising you, and I'm sure that they are as competent and as honest as my economist, is that it needs to go higher than where we are at the moment, because otherwise we will not manage to tame inflation.
And the question is, how do you think, what is your colleagues from FIT think about that? Do you have a conversation with them?
We not only, we do of course have conversations, we exchange a lot, and actually I will be seeing Jay Powell tonight. We have dinner tonight. We have a meeting of the Bank of International Settlement in Basel, and I'm having dinner with him tonight. So yes, we do talk a lot. But you know, President, whatever is the coming out of this situation, who wins, who loses, in a way is irrelevant. What matters is that Ukraine, at the end of the day, wins. So I take the very simple view that those who have the biggest gun at the end of the day win, right? This is a very stupid, basic Wild West cowboy principle. It is the case at the moment that the biggest military power in the world is the United States. So the United States is supplying the biggest shipment of weapons, is providing a very large amount of funding, and that's the reality that we deal with. And I don't think that we can just argue about who wins, who loses. It's you who has to win, and we have to make every effort we can to support you.
I'm also a good user of electronic money. So my question, you're introducing the electronic euro, as I know.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
How can switching to an electronic currency help?
Well, two things. Number one, it will be decided in October. So we are preparing the ground. We want to be ready. We want to be trained, but it will not be decided until October 23.
I'm a user of Bitcoin too, so I had bought it when it started, and I hope that it also will work through the special system. And I know there are many protests in Europe against the electronic euro. What is the reason?
You know, it's the beauty of Europe. It has different positions. If you ask in Northern Europe, for instance, in the Netherlands, they're quite happy to see the e-euro coming. If you ask a young German man, he'll say, yeah, fine. As I said, I don't want Meta, Google, or Amazon to suddenly come up with a currency that will take over the sovereignty of Europe. I don't want a foreign currency to become the currency of trading within Europe. So we have to be ready.
No, the problem is they don't want to be controlled. They don't want to...
Yeah, but you know what? Now we have in Europe this threshold. Above 1,000 euros, you cannot pay cash. If you do, you are on the gray market. You take your risk. You get caught, you are fined, or you go in jail. But you know, the digital euro is going to have a limited amount of control. There will be control. You're right. You're completely right. We are considering whether for very small amounts, you know, anything that is around 300, 400 euros, we could have a mechanism where there is zero control. But that could be dangerous. The terrorist attacks on France back 10 years ago were entirely financed by those very small anonymous credit cards that you can recharge in total anonymity.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you very much. I'm really
Thank
happy
you
to
to
talk
you.
to you. Thank you. Have
Same
a great
here.
day with your colleagues.
You too.
Okay, thank you.
Ravana Lexus.